Hey everybody, I'm That One Guy, and I wanted to create a series of videos to go over the Weakauras I've created. The whole purpose of the Weakauras is obviously to help you better understand your spec and hopefully help you play better as a result, but also to gamify the game. Because WoW does present you with some spell alerts for the specs you play, but not all. And so that leaves you looking for ways to identify if a certain buff or debuff is active. And that's where Weakauras can come in play. And I wanted to do more than just have an icon with a timer in it, right? I wanted to try to present you with visual effects that make it feel more like a video game and immerse you more into the spec you're playing. At least that's the idea. So in these videos, I'm going to go over the Weakauras I've created, how I intend for them to work, and show you how you can modify them if you'd like. So whether you've already found my Weakauras, or you're looking for some for a certain spec, or you just want to have a better idea of how Weakauras work in general, hopefully these videos will help you with that. Bear Druid or Guardian Druid, and hopefully I did a good service to this one. I know this was one that someone had been asking for, so if you think I'm missing anything, again, just leave me the feedback in the comments. But let's take a look at what I did for this one, and hopefully it's, up to expectations. Alright, so this will be everything. Again, just like all of my Weakura packs, not everything is going to be on there all at the same time. There's a reason for its location and its existence, and I'll go through everything little by little, so we'll make it all go away, and we will come back and do the hero talents at the end. So Berserk, just a little icon. It'd be in the middle, unless you have Convoke, right? So if you have Convoke and Berserk, meaning you don't have Incarn, I need to make sure that that icon changes. It would change if I wasn't talented into Incarn, but when you have Berserk and Convoke, not Incarn, you'd have those two cooldowns letting you know when there's 10 seconds left on the cooldown. If you're not talented into Convoke, then Berserk would be in the middle, right where Incarn is. So it just depends on what you're talented into. If you're talented in Incarn, you won't have Convoke, and you won't have Berserk, and you'll just have that one cooldown right there in the middle. Simple enough. 10 seconds or less, that pops back up, lets you know, hey, there's 10 seconds on this, and it's coming back up off cooldown. Mangle, simple little tracker. If you see it, right, it's off cooldown. If you don't see it, it's not. Thrash, same thing. One thing I maybe could do to change it up a little bit is to, because on some of the abilities what I've done is make like a little circular progress tracker, so that when that goes away, there's a circular progress tracker in its place letting you know how long till it's up off cooldown. But for now, especially with how much Mangle gets reset, just leaving it like that. Moonfire debuff, so when Moonfire is active on your target, you'll see that. When it's not, you won't. And then same thing for the Thrash debuff. Doesn't count up, right? So you won't know if you're at 1 stack or 5 stacks, but I figure if you're just using Thrash on cooldown and playing your spec kind of how you're supposed to, not sitting on your hands, that'll be at max stacks. If you want a different way to know the number, let me know. Maybe it's just a color coding scheme or something like that, or I have to make an entirely different icon. Lunar Beam is where we get into the other cooldowns that are shorter, unlike Convoke and Incarn and Berserk. So Lunar Beam, when it's off cooldown, it'll look like that, but it'll actually probably be in a different place. It, again, depends on what you're talented into. If you are not talented into Tooth and Claw, it'll be right here, because Tooth and Claw gives you an image that pops up, an alert that pops up right there. You'll see that one in a second. But if you're not talented into Tooth and Claw, it'll be right here. When you are, it moves over to the left-hand side. So depending on what you're talented into, will change the location of this Weakura, just to kind of match the theme that they had going for Bear Druid. It looked like on the left was like the moon side stuff, and on the right was the, naturey bear side things. So that's kind of why when you're in Elune's Chosen, it'll probably just be right here, and your Moonfire proc thing on the left. You'll see as we go. Rage of the Sleeper, same deal. If you take Rage of the Sleeper and you're not talented in Tooth and Claw, it'll be right in there. Right, it'll be tucked in to the exact same spot where this is, right where the Tooth and Claw alert is. But if you are talented in Tooth and Claw, which I'm pretty sure you regularly are when you take Rage of the Sleeper, it seems like those kind of go hand in hand for the builds that they do, then Rage of the Sleeper will go out there. So again, these just pop up right when they're coming off cooldown, so it's more of a see it and use it thing. If either of those or something where you're just going to let them sit for a while, then we probably want to use a different alert so they're not just taking up screen real estate and hanging out for a long time. Gore, that's just one of the base alerts that Guardian has. So I recreate stuff again. So you could change the color if you wanted to. I don't have it set to do anything special, right? Galactic Guardian, this is when your Moonfire debuff, or when your Moonfire will do something special. I do have this set to when it's going to expire, that it will desaturate or turn gray, because I read that it was like, hey, only use it when it's about to expire. I feel like it refreshes so much that it never expires, but there it is. If you're talented into Gory Fur, you will see that icon. Sorry, I'm liking to click things. All right, if you're talented into Gory Fur, you'll see that pop up. Stole it from for Blood DK, but it's blood, right? So if you proc Gory Fur, will be there. If it's not something you're going to use as soon as you see it, again, maybe move that, maybe don't have it, up to you. If you ever don't want any of this stuff, you can right click and delete children in group, or go to load and set to never, and then it'll never load, right? Unless you wanted to. Dream of Cenarius is in the exact same spot. So if you're talented in Dream of Cenarius, where you get your free castable in any form regrowth, that'll pop up on your screen. And then just Rage, Incarn, letting you know how much time's left on that. Same thing for Rage of the Sleeper and Lunar Beam. They're stacked on top of each other. If you're taking both, because I did see that Elune's chosen single target took both, I'll have it set to where they're offset, so they're not on top of each other, but I'll have to get a little creative, because right below those is Iron Fur. Right, that number in the middle is just the charges of it, rather than how much time is left on it. The progress bar tells you how much time is left on it. And one thing I wanted to point out real quick about the Rage Bear. The Rage is that, since I believe it's Incarn, reduces the cost of your Rage for Maul and Iron Fur by 50%, so they don't cost 40, they cost 20. That tick bar, when you're outside of Incarn, is set at 40, so you know that if your Rage is past that tick bar, obviously there's a number there and you can figure it out yourself, but when it's past that tick bar, that means Maul or Iron Fur is castable. In Incarn, they are obviously only costing 20 instead of 40, so the tick bar moves to 20, so then you know in Incarn, if that bar is over 20, those things are castable. So that will move around depending on the buffs that you have active. I enjoyed that for myself. And then going back to the hero talents would be Lunar Amplification. That seemed like the only thing in Elune's Chosen that I cared to know about. And even then, you may not even really care to know about it. It's the thing where as you use non-arcane abilities, the next arcane ability is buffed. Gets up to 3 stacks, so just 3 little moons like Elune. Just wanted to have something, right? Just something to go with Elune's Chosen. Again, if you don't care about it, right-click and delete, or go to Load tab and set Never. And then Druid of the Claw. Lots of things with Druid of the Claw. I'll make this go away because, so when Ravage is active, right, when your Maul is replaced with Ravage, that'll pop up on your screen letting you know, hey, that's Ravage now. Wild Power Surge. It's just the Druid of the Claw icon. I felt like it worked. It looks like exactly what you're going for here for theme, because that is the theme. And so it stacks up to 6 times, right, for whether you are a cat or a bear, right? So this is obviously for Guardian, but for Feral it should do the same thing, and stack up to 6 times to let you know when you're at max stacks, so that you can do your cat weaving or your bear weaving if you're a Feral. And then I added these 2 things because kind of like the advanced stuff for cat weaving said, hey, you know, if your Rake isn't active or is in the pandemic window, you use it. Otherwise, you use, I think it's Shred, and then Rip. If Rip isn't active or in the pandemic window, you do that one when you switch over to the cat. Otherwise, you do Bite. So I figured, all right, I'll put those there. If you don't want to know about them, again, go to the Load tab and Never, or right-click and delete would be my suggestion for you. I didn't do, the other 2 things I thought about were Vicious Cycle, where it's like, I think it's Mangle will buff Maul and Maul will buff Mangle, stacking up to 3 times, but I didn't feel like you played around it that much. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe you're like, no, I really need to know about Vicious Cycle. The other one being the, like, I think it's like Wild Shape Mastery. Basically the talent for Druid of the Claw, where when you switch to a cat, you have that cat buff for a bit, you know, more stamina, more armor, and then when you switch back from the cat to the bear, you get, like, take 10% more healing for the damage that you took for like 8 seconds or something like that. Could throw that in, probably would just put little circles with an icon on the bottom left and right for that, but it didn't necessarily feel like something that you'd really track, because at least whether I was playing wrong or not, I would switch over to cat, do the rip, switch back over to bear, and keep on going. But if that's something you kind of want to like min-max if you're supposed to, let me know. We can track that. Oh yeah, see, these glow when they're in the pandemic window, when there's less than like 3.4 seconds or whatever it is. Whatever the pandemic window is for these it glows. So that's it for all of the hero talents. Right now I am in Druid of the Claw, and so I will show kind of what that looks like as you play. This is not a guide, this is just showing what the Weakauras look like as you play the spec and how they pop up. Obviously, when you are not in combat, there will not be anything on your screen. As soon as you enter combat is when you're going to start to see the stuff, right? This lets me know the Incarn is off cooldown, Mangle is off cooldown, there's my Moonfire debuff, Thrash is off cooldown, and obviously I don't have Rake or Rip active on my target, and then that is my Rage of the Sleeper, letting me know I can push that button. So there's your Thrash debuff, a Gore reset, Tooth and Claw, right? Building up my Feline Potential stacks till I get to 6, and if I just were to go ahead and use stuff, there's your Incarn tracker, your Rage of the Sleeper tracker, just so you kind of like know how much you have available. There would be your Gory Fur proc, Iron Fur, right? Just kind of like, as I think if, and there was Ravage, sorry, I pushed the button too fast. There it is, kind of like that. I think if you were you can switch to a cat and do Rip and switch back, voila. I think if you were a main of this, that this would make sense. I enjoyed it just because like I didn't have to look down at my bars. I could see what my bear was doing. I could see what was going on in front of me. I didn't have to kind of guess and like look down and track like, is Mangle up, is Thrash up, what's coming up next. I just know if those aren't available, I can swipe or Iron Fur or Maul or whatever. And it was pretty nice. I thought, again, probably bias because it is mine. But yeah. Oh, there we go. Push the buttons. Switch back. That was switched again. Whoops. See, not a Bear Druid main, right? So spamming buttons and not knowing what I'm pushing. Obviously, Rage of the Sleeper is back. That's how that's intended to work. But this would just be kind of like I said, your base stuff that you would see if you're in Druid of the Claw and single target. I will back away so I can switch it over to Elune's Chosen. So this would be when you're Elune's Chosen and in AoE, not in single target. In the AoE loadout, at least that it had on Wowhead, you aren't taking Rage of the Sleeper and you aren't taking Tooth and Claw, and so that is why you'd see the Lunar Beam cooldown right there. And there's an example of an ability I'm not tracking, right? When you have, I can't remember what that's called, but basically the big Moonfire coming down. If you want to know when that's active, we could probably put a little progress tracker for that. But Lunar Beam is there. You saw when I was going through the Weakauras, it was over here on the left. It'll do that if you're talented in a Tooth and Claw, so that Tooth and Claw can exist in that same spot. Otherwise, it's the exact same thing, right? As far as like how everything looks and what it does. The difference being you aren't going to be tracking up on your Druid of the Claw buffs, obviously your Feline Potential. Instead, it's the arcane stuff right there that you'd be getting, and then when you activate your Lunar Beam, right there you get its cooldown right there. But other than that, everything else is exactly the same. Oh, and as you see, because I'm an Incarn, this tick mark is moved to 20, and as soon as Incarn goes away, it's going to move back up to 40. Perfect. Solid in action. The only other thing I'll show, just real quick, is when you do have Tooth and Claw active, and at the same time it probably have Rage of the Sleeper active, and so you can see that Lunar Beam CD tracker will switch over to the other side, just like it showed in the Weakura. So then this would be in single target, and the only thing that really changes is because we are talented into Tooth and Claw, Rage of the Sleeper as well, you'll see that this is on the left and this is on the right. So again, going with the theme that they have, that Blizz already had with the Druids of, you know, the Moonfire Galactic Guardian was here on the left and Tooth and Claw was on the right, so just trying to stick with that theme. But that's it, and then obviously if you were talented to Convoke and not Incarn, you'd have those two cooldowns right there. But that's all I've got. I know there was another one that was maybe like as you as you do damage, you might get a little shield based off the damage you're doing, but I didn't think that one needed to be tracked either. If you disagree with me on any of this stuff or feel like I left anything out that you absolutely need to know about, just let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to make it work if I can. Otherwise, I hope you like it and have fun. Again, I hope you found that helpful. I do intend to make a Weakura pack for every spec. So if I haven't made one for the spec that you play or that you'd like to see, just comment that down below. Again, I do intend to make one for every spec, but if I see people asking for it or really wanting one, I'll probably get to it quicker than if I just do it on my slow, leisurely pace. I hope it will enhance your gameplay. Like I said, it's all about gamifying the game and making it more fun and more immersive for you, while also helping you improve as a player because the information that you need to react to is hopefully more readily available. If you have any other questions about this Weakura pack that you just watched or any other ones, again, please feel free to comment. I try to be as interactive as possible in my YouTube section. And that's it. I hope you have a great day.